Welcome in 32 teams in 32 days. It's the summer edition of Roster the People. And today we have a packed house. Eagle-eyed viewers will notice we usually have 3 people. Today we have 4. It's what happens when all the schedules work out fine. Today, as you will notice from my background, we are here to talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Today is the 25th of June, so keep that in mind as we're recording this. That is not when you will be watching it. If anything we say in the course of this analytical breakdown sounds a little odd, tune back in for the recap show. We'll be updating all these takes and going through it. But to be honest with you, with Baltimore, I have a feeling we pretty much know what's going on. Jason, how you doing, buddy?
All right, man. It's pretty hot. So been trying to survive the heat and, get all of my projections up. Finally got those knocked out. So we're set there. And now it's time to tinker and mess it all up. So.
I saw you posted. So if you're a member of our Discord, check those out because he made helpful little infographics for everyone. So they actually look good. I'm not being sarcastic. Those look
shabby.
Nice. Like those look nice. Those look as nice as any of the ones I've seen on Twitter or anything like that. So they're very professionally done, and I appreciate you doing that because they look very pretty. So check that out if you're a member of our Discord. Mike Burland, how you doing, buddy? How's it going?
Great. Good to be back. Excited to talk about the Ravens. I think no spoilers, or maybe a slight spoiler. I think they're a pretty easy team for fantasy. So excited.
Should be right.
Like I
don't know how hard
there are big changes.
Okay, and this is why these shows are supposed to be 30 minutes. They take an hour, and then back for the first time in a little while, sporting a brand new haircut and facial hair, Mr. Mike Manning. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Ready to talk some football again. All the sports are dwindling down, so we just need to get football back to going.
Yes. Baseball is reaching the halfway mark. Hockey is now over.
College World Series just wrapped up.
What a ride. And basketball is also over. So we're in that summertime lull officially. But with that out of the way, just as always, anything you hear is going to be largely based on the Fantasy Pros ECR. We're going to use Fantasy Pros ADPs. These are always built with 12-team PPR in mind, and it is redraft. We will obviously give dynasty notes and various other things, and we'll mix in our own individual rankings. But as a baseline, that is how this proceeds. So Baltimore Ravens, starting with quarterback. You know him, you love him. It's Lamar Jackson. Nothing has changed in that regard. So just to set the table, early kind of ECR, Lamar is coming in as the QB4, which would translate to about 32 overall if you're just looking at how that would translate to rankings. His actual ADP, summertime ADP for Lamar, is 47. So the public is this is opposite of what we usually see. Normally the public inflates quarterback, but in this case, he's actually higher in the expert consensus than he is as far as the public goes. Why do we think that is?
Derrick Henry. I think that's the one big answer. Everybody's thinking that he's going to actually be a healthy running back for the entirety of their run, and instead of having J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards that kind of split the load, it's going to be Henry and Lamar, and it's just going to be them really leaning on Henry to establish the run.
Anybody have any other kind of nitpick or anything with that?
No, maybe it's the lack of weapons they added as well. They didn't really add anything, right? Still Bateman and Aguilar there is their 2 and 3 at the receiver. So I don't really know. It is a little bit surprising though, for especially a rushing quarterback to be down that far compared to the ECR.
It has a lot to do with people expecting a lot more from the Monken offense last year, expecting a boom in production, and we didn't see that. Nothing has changed other than adding Henry, which, if anything, doesn't help Lamar. It's not going to help him in the passing game. It may help him in the rushing game. Like maybe teams are more fearful, obviously, of 6'3" Derrick Henry rather than Gus Edwards, whatever. I think he's almost as old as Henry, if not as old, and J.K. Dobbins, the shell of him. So
we'll get into that on a future show, and I promise no one who's in this room will be bitter about that conversation at all. Yeah, that's the right. Yeah, you look away. Yeah, you look the other direction when I say that to you. Can't even make eye contact. I'm going to be eating goldfish for that show, just like last year, the entire time. Mike, you had a note here about Lamar though. So what's the thing you want people to be aware of?
It's just that I know that we put him up with the rushing quarterbacks because he is one of the most electric rushing quarterbacks in the NFL. But if you put him with Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen types, it's just not going to fare as well for him in the bigger stats. So he was one of the 3 quarterbacks that had 30 plus rushing attempts in the red zone last year with those other 2. Now Jalen Hurts was a 44, and I think Lamar was around like 32. So Hurts is on a tier of his own when it comes to that. Rushing
Hurts benefits from the tush push in a way that Lamar doesn't.
But Allen and Hurts are used to being like the big bodies that can do the inside the 5s and be used as designed runners down there. While Lamar is more likely than not, if it's not around like the 18 or something, and him just running in a broken down play or something along those lines, he's probably not going to be the usage. It's going to be Derrick Henry, Gus Edwards types. So it does sometimes cap unless he picks up. Obviously, touchdowns are what people want. Touchdowns what gets the most fantasy points. So if he has a cap in terms of his rushing touchdowns because of him not being the red zone guy compared to the other guys, then it pushes him down a little bit.
And that, my friend, is why I think you actually are seeing the ADP slide as opposed to the expert consensus. Because in the expert consensus, he's still part of the Konami code. One of the trends we've noticed year on year, especially over the last 2 years, really over the last 2 years, is that even in the ECR, you're seeing quarterbacks go up in drafts because they're the general idea being you should prioritize getting one of these like top 5 rushing floor quarterbacks for your team because there is, a measurable difference between that and quarterbacks that don't run. You know what I mean? Like that's something that is correct. Now I will say for my own personal philosophy, I still won't be rostering Lamar, even with the discount that the public is giving you, because it just, to me, I'm not totally in agreement with the change in philosophy of you should really prioritize getting one of these top 5 guys. Call me a dinosaur, call me an old man who's slow to change, but I still prioritize. I want to take my shots on blue chip running backs and wide receivers in the early rounds, and I will figure out quarterback later, just based on the idea that I only need one quarterback every week. I need multiples at these other positions. The injury rate is so much higher at those other positions. Typically, I know last year throws a wrench into that with all the quarterback injuries, but I'm really not projecting for that. That I think is an outlier. I really don't think you can apply the injury numbers from 24 forward at the quarterback position. If that did happen 2 years in a row, I think you actually might see rule changes in the NFL to protect quarterbacks, because that, even just based on what happened last year, they were talking about changing the rules to protect quarterbacks because they know the NFL is not stupid. They know that people tune in to see the big ticket quarterbacks play well. They want to prioritize those guys being on the field every Sunday because they know nobody's going to tune in to watch Sam Darnold play, Mark Sanchez. I could probably come up with better comps, but you know what I mean as a general idea. Like they'd much rather watch Joe Burrow play Lamar twice a year. So I think that's part of it. And I do completely agree. The addition of Derrick Henry makes it very difficult for me to sit here and think, oh yeah, they're totally going to give Lamar designed runs from inside the 5. That's the whole reason you got Derrick Henry, was because you want a big guy who's going to be able to push it in from the 5. You don't want to run the risk. They've seen what happens when Lamar gets hurt. They know what their team is with Lamar and without Lamar. With Lamar, you're AFC Championship contender. Without Lamar, maybe you make playoffs, maybe you don't. You know what I mean? It's like they know that.
And they lost Tyler Huntley, so now they're down to Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley. So
yes, and now they have Josh Johnson, which blew me away when I was pulling this together yesterday. I was like, wow, he's still in the league? Holy cow. Okay. Best job in pro sports. Backup quarterback. Gotta love it. Play forever. So yeah, I think that is for me, it's just I don't think I'm going to roster too much Lamar given what they want, and even with the discount the public's giving you. Yeah. So we've talked about Derrick Henry a lot. Look. We all know Lamar is top 5, right? It's just a question of whether or not we all agree he's top 5. It's just a question of whether or not you individually constructing your roster want to invest in that. I would tell you no. I think other people maybe would contest that and say, yeah, I'm more okay with it than Neil is, but I'm not. Not a 5 other options. If there's nothing else, I think we should talk about Derrick Henry in detail because we have teased it a couple times. So this is a tough one to rank. It's been a tough one for me. I'm known Derrick Henry truther and then apologist. That's how long I've been doing this. He was one of my favorite guys that never got enough love, and then he went on this crazy tear, and now he's getting older. Who among us isn't getting older? You know what I mean? So it's a tough one for me to rank and separate out my own biases. I can tell you that in the ECR, he opens as the RB12, which should translate to around 42 overall in the ECR. His ADP, though, to Jason's point from a minute ago, his ADP is 33, so the public is in. The public is not ready to give up on Derrick Henry. What say you all?
I'm in on him. Especially how we already talked about how ugly that mid to late second round looks. You know, I'm in on Derrick Henry. I think obviously injury is going to hold him back, but without an injury, the dude's he's going to feast. He's going to get all the touches. There's no one else really to worry about on that team taking it away. And, you know, like in terms of his efficiency, you know, yards per attempt and stuff like that, it's been very similar in the last 3 years. And, you know, I know he just didn't have the volume last year as he's had in past years, but you look at his numbers, and I don't even know how much this matters or not, but his numbers in games where they either won or it was a close game, he was still putting up 17, 18, or averaging about 17 points per game. So he was still really good. He's going to be on one of the best offenses in the league. So I'm excited about Henry this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the cost for me. I really kind of think that, granted, I know Edwards pretty much had the job the entirety of last year, and hopefully they've gotten a little bit better on the O-line, but it is Henry. The problem with that is he also takes a little bit to get going. So we've seen that the first 10 touches aren't always the way to go, but you get him up to that 18, 19, 20, that's when he really starts to
call it anything past 20 is where you start seeing the usual rule is anything past 20 and past, because by the time that happens, what you'll watch is he just wears down opposing defenses. They just don't want to tackle him anymore. Tackling him takes such a commitment that he's not tired after 20 carries, but the defense is definitely tired of trying to bring him down. That's history. Whether or not that will continue, debatable. But that's the historical approach to Derrick Henry, is that you want to get him 20 carries a game. That's been going on since he was sharing a job with DeMarco Murray. Google it, kids. Google it, non-people who don't know what I'm talking about. Like, that's been going on forever. And they figured this out at one point when they were still sharing that job. This is like ancient history, but that was the number. They realized if Derrick Henry gets 20 carries a game, the Titans would win those games. When he didn't get 20 carries, they would lose. And that's the birth of this. And that's kind of what it morphed into, was the first 10 carries, we'll see. 20, okay, that's about right where he should be. Anything past 20 is where you start making hay, because they'll still stack the box on him, but it doesn't matter because they don't want to tackle him anymore. And it gets kind of nasty. Mike, I know you've got some notes on this because you've got some notes, because one of my concerns is, you know, he is getting older. That man's got a lot of wear and tear on the body at this point. So how do you feel about his new home and his kind of increasing age?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know the adage of like 28, 29-year-old running backs is scary. You know, we saw Mostert at 31 last year have a monster season with the Dolphins, but that is 18 touchdowns is not frequent. The next closest thing would have been like LeGarrette Blount when he was with the Patriots the 1 year.
We all know how that worked out long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Henry, as we're saying, it's good. He's good in terms of fantasy production when his team is winning. That because he isn't in the passing game.
Yep.
And so, it's just obvious. If his team's leading, they're going to rely on him, and he's going to get a lot of touches, and he's going to just volume-based get points.
Yeah.
The Ravens led the league last year in terms of possession time leading. They're one of the best teams, obviously, so that's going to be in his favor. And if he's going from Tennessee, the past 2 years, we're bottom 2 in yards before contact allowed. And he's going to the number 1 team in the past 2 seasons for the offensive line in the Ravens in yards before contact allowed. So Henry was best at getting yards after contact because he had to. So now he's going to not have to as much. So this is all pointing to like he should have a good season. But at his price, I might be a little skittish with it.
Yeah.
One little note to add on to that is I think didn't the Ravens replace 3 of their offensive linemen this offseason? So that is something to take note on. Like I know we assume they're just going to be good because of the Ravens and they always are good at offensive line running the ball, but there's a chance that maybe they struggle a little bit with losing 3 of their starters. So
the other note that I want to make sure we hit on though was the caveat to that, because I agree with you, Mike. That is worth noting is that it's not exactly the same O-line. Coaching staff is the same, and that's always good. You like that level of consistency, but it's new. It is some new players. What I don't think will change is Mike's other note here, which is that Baltimore was 4th in run rate under Todd Monken. I don't think that changes. I think that's
That's not going to change. So at least that's a positive that Monken didn't exactly go to become a pass-heavy offense with the Ravens. He didn't change that philosophy.
And if we go down narrative street from last year, they were talking about that, about we're going to throw more, and then that never happened. And to be perfectly honest with you, I just think that's a lie. Like I think it's they were talking about that during this time last summer, and it's lying season. Everybody's lying to you right now. Coaches are lying, teams are lying. Nobody's telling you the truth because why would they? They have no incentive to tell you the truth about anything.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do think that they have mentioned using 2 tight end sets, which probably is going to actually happen. I mean,
sure, but
that's going to be more
great. So more blocking, even better. Yeah. So
but
you can put 2 tight ends on the field and not have them both run patterns. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. The other issue with that is the next name in Keaton Mitchell.
Well, hold on. We're gonna
because of the pass catching. That's more of the issue when you're looking at what really hurts Henry is he doesn't. It's not going to happen. You're not.
I know, but I think Mike already mentioned it. And it's
more than one a game.
Mike already mentioned that it's baked in. It's baked in to the ECR, and it's baked into a lot of his ADP. The idea that he's not there to catch passes. So you are banking on a traditional running back. So yes, the existence of Keaton Mitchell is worth noting because he will be the one catching passes, assuming he's healthy. But if you look at the sheet, you'll notice I added something very deliberately, which is Keaton Mitchell is currently ranked in the ECR as RB62, which would translate to 218 overall. That is outside draftable range. His ADP, 217. That is also outside draftable range. So that's worth noting just in the sense that no one cares about Keaton Mitchell. He's going completely undrafted. It's a total afterthought. Read into that what you will would be my advice to you. If you think that the Derrick Henry thing is, a bunch of magic beans that someone's trying to sell you, then you should probably pick up Keaton Mitchell either at the end of your draft or off the waiver wire once the draft is over. Because if you're thinking that Derrick Henry is done and he's not going to be able to be as effective, then that probably will translate to more work for Keaton Mitchell, both running and especially catching the football. And there's no price tag for it, but I certainly would not. I'm not banking on that. I'm not telling you for my own rankings and analysis. I wouldn't bank on that. I'm not telling you to go draft Keaton Mitchell. It's just something that I thought was interesting as a theoretical thing to put out in the universe. That
I also want to throw out the idea that over the past few years, we've been realizing that running backs that are becoming the RB 1, 2, 3 on the year catch passes.
Yeah.
So Henry has a cap.
Yes.
It
would be very hard for him to get in the top 5.
Yeah, he is very unlikely to be a top 5 in terms of points and points per game running back next season. He can be an RB1, so top 10, top 12. He can be that. But it's just, you got to cap expectations. So do you want to draft in the 2nd or 3rd round a player that you don't expect to have any real chance of being or not a likely chance of being the top tier guy.
Yeah. And I can tell you just from the first couple names, the way the expert consensus sees it is that you should prioritize Lamar and be a little, no, I wouldn't say concerned, but to Mike's point about there's a cap on Henry, that's baked in when you look at the ECR. The public doesn't agree. The public is saying, no, fade Lamar, Derrick Henry, good at football, because I've seen that movie a lot of times. That's what scares me more than anything, because if it depends, that's going to become very relevant in the draft room on draft day. Someone is going to invest heavily in this draft in Derrick Henry, and for my money, that's a guy who I could see getting reached on a lot. The closer we get, we'll see how this goes. But I could see that happening. But there is no, as we just kind of got done, there is no Derrick Henry handcuff. Like last year, we talked about Spears being the Derrick Henry handcuff again and again and again every week throughout the season. I don't feel that way about Keaton Mitchell, that he would be a true handcuff. I think if something was to happen, you would see Keaton Mitchell get some work. But they learned last year you can't give Keaton Mitchell that full job. He'll get hurt more than likely. He's not built for that. So you're going to see Justice Hill out there. And nobody wants to see that again. We've all seen Justice Hill many, many times at this point. I feel like if it was going to happen for him, it would have happened by now.
I'd throw it's more of a maybe a little dynasty nugget, but Rasheen Ali, he's a rookie 5th-round pick. Like honestly, I feel like if Derrick Henry goes down, like we said, Keaton Mitchell's not the workhorse. Justice Hill, we've seen him be very bad throughout 4 or 5 years.
What I was going to say, that
At
bad
best,
would also qualify.
Yeah. So, I mean, Rasheen Ali could be someone that like steps in. I don't think he's a true handcuff. I agree with you. I don't think there is, but he might be just like throw him on your dynasty rosters if you have the space.
Okay. I could see that. There's an interesting path to that happening. It could turn into a nasty 3-headed monster car wash situation, though. The thing Keaton Mitchell has going for him is that he's very, very, very fast, and he's got good hands. So we're just going to have to see how it shakes out. But he's not proven so far to be very durable. So
he's only on one leg at this point, and I don't think they expect him to be ready for the start of the season. So
there it is. That's exactly, because I was going to say he got hurt late last year.
It was bad.
So that's worth noting as well. So don't Leonardo DiCaprio squint into the camera over there, Mr. Mountain Dew.
I was thinking more than anything else, like with the new kickoff rule, it could be something interesting to look at.
He would have to be healthy. And also they don't want to, they probably aren't going to want to risk him getting killed.
Of all other players, his ability to explode through a hole like that and just really in space, that could be something that you might be looking at.
They have no shortage of crappy wide receivers on this team that could do that job very effectively.
They just signed Deontay Hardy, who
there you go.
That's a
perfect choice. Yeah, perfect choice. Deontay Hardy, perfect. No one cares if he gets hurt. They're not counting on him to do anything other than what the kickoffs. Beautiful. All right, let's go into wide receivers. Wide receiver is interesting. People want so badly for there to be like a proper wide receiver answer in this room. And I don't know if they're going to get what they want. This is where it actually gets kind of properly interesting for me, because Zay Flowers coming into year 2 is going to be the lead receiver for this team. We saw flashes of what he can do as he kind of, I would say for my money, he hit my expectations largely for what I thought he could be coming into the league. Not the most consistent thing I've ever seen in my entire life, but as the season went on, he started getting into the flow, and Lamar seems to look for him and seems comfortable with him, which is half of it right there. So expectations last year were nice and kind of low. Here's my problem. Zay Flowers opens the year in the early ECR as the wide receiver 26, which would translate to about 48 overall. The ADP on Zay Flowers is 34. Not wide receiver 34. 34 overall. I'm good. Nah. That's my actual analysis, is just nah.
There might be some recency bias put in there.
There's always recency bias. That's people. People only remember the last thing they just saw. That's been psychologically and statistically proven again and again and again in all areas of life, not just football.
Yeah, and if we look at this, obviously Flowers came on at the end of the season. Andrews was hurt second half of the season. I don't know when the last Ravens wide receiver, maybe Steve Smith,
Oh, God,
when that was a solid fantasy option. Not even good, solid. I'm not banking on a second or third round ADP. You said 34 overall or something along
34
those lines.
overall, which would
Yeah,
be third
I
round,
wouldn't
end
take
of the third
Andrews,
round.
who I expect to lead the team, that high. So why would I take a wide receiver that hasn't done it on a consistent basis? Again, I'm just not. I get that these are high-powered offenses like Baltimore and such, but that doesn't guarantee that some pass catcher is going to be the guy.
I'm nervous about Derrick Henry this year, given the investment. I'm even more nervous about this. Like this is terrifying to me. I would not want to be put in this position in the draft room where I'm staring down the reality where that's my third round pick. So he's my wide receiver 2 by that point, more than likely. A lot can go wrong with that. Not a big fan of this idea so far, as I've made very clear. Mike, Burland, what do you think?
No, I 100% agree. I mean, we just haven't seen it. Like Mike said, we haven't seen a wide receiver be even productive. I mean, Hollywood Brown 2021, I think he was like a wide receiver 3. Yeah, wide receiver 28 per game. Like, I just don't see it with
when
Zay
he can take a
Flowers
break
at
from
all.
arguing with the coaching staff to actually play a game. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm out. I would want him. I'm not even sure about him as like my wide receiver 3. I'd be much more comfortable with him as my wide receiver 3. No way is he going to be my wide receiver 2. So I'm out at that ADP.
Jason, is there anything you want to add to this, or are we going to clean sweep this?
I mean, it is expensive, but at the same point, I mean, in his rookie campaign, he saw over 100 targets. It's kind of an ideal situation. I mean, I know that Andrews is coming back, but when he had to step up, he clearly did. I mean, of course, this last game is just unprecedented with him going 3 for 3 and 106 yards and a touchdown. But I mean, before that, he had a 9 for 72 game with a touchdown, a 6 for 60 and a touchdown. I mean, the end of there, he really kind of made something and had clearly kind of found his own way. And so, again, if he wasn't so expensive, I'd be all on this. But man, that's a high price for something that you're likely buying at a ceiling. Than, I mean, a place that I'd be more comfortable actually buying into a player like that. So
I can pretty much guarantee you this is another one where in draft rooms with experts, he'll fall, but with the public, someone will reach on this. If you assemble 12 people from the public, I guarantee you he would go. I could see why he's going at 34 because, again, recency bias. You're coming off of what you saw at the end of last year, and you're probably forgetting the context that Mark Andrews was hurt and they had other issues at that time. And if you're going to project that out to a full season, I can completely understand how you'd arrive at like, let's go at 34 overall. Let's do it. Like, that's fantastic. But for me, it's like the risk on this blowing up. There are safer options. I can tell you that right now. That is not the right tab. The players going around this. So that is half point, which no one likes. And okay. So okay. Let's play with it this way. Zay Flowers or Michael Pittman?
Pittman.
Yeah, Pittman for me too. Zay Flowers or Tank Dell? That's a good one.
Tank.
Dell.
I'll take Tank.
Yeah.
That's close, right?
It's
right? That's where I'm at, Mike. It's like, yeah, that's like the Spider-Man meme. Like, I don't know about that. It's very similar because you got a new addition in Diggs, and this has got a guy returning. I'm like, you're adding.
I'd probably take Zay there, but I also don't think that either one of those should be going in like the third, fourth, fifth, anything like that. Crazy.
Yeah, Okay, well, how about this one? Flowers or Amari Cooper?
Oh, Cooper.
Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper's going like 5 spots behind him
That's crazy.
in the early ADP. Cooper's going at like 39, 40.
That's because again, they don't have Flacco. Like I'm nervous with him with Watson.
He was good with Watson last year.
He was
We'll get
actually
to
good
that.
with
but
Watson.
He was fine. I was gonna say I'm not overly worried about that. We'll do. Oh, you know what? I've got a couple good ones. We'll do these quickly. Flowers or Christian Kirk?
Kirk.
Kirk.
Okay. Flowers or T Higgins?
Flowers.
T.
I'll go T.
I'm also
Yeah.
on
It'd be very close just because I don't know if he's I don't know.
Last one, and we're moving on. Flowers or George Pickens? Yeah, that's the
Pickens.
Pickens.
Nah, I'll go Pickens. Yeah.
As much as I hate Arthur Smith, probably Pickens. All of those guys are going at least 5 spots behind Zay Flowers for the most part. Every single one of them that I just listed off. And it's like, so they're all basically in the same round, or the top of the 4th, I guess. I could see already, we pretty much have consensus that I think we all would broadly agree to different orders of magnitude. But we would all broadly agree that, Zay Flowers at 34 is a bit of a reach. The only other ranked Ravens wide receiver is Rashad Bateman, who people just desperately
Want to
want
happen.
this to be a thing because they just won't let it go. I think because of his college career. Early ECR, wide receiver 71, 178 overall. So that's like the end of the draft. That's like the 15th round. His ADP is 166 because he plays for the Ravens. So that would put him around the 14th round, roughly. I kind of don't care.
No, don't care.
I don't have a strong opinion on this.
No,
If that's what you want to do in the 14th round, I don't care.
Yeah, sure.
He'd be the last skill position player on your team. Because then you're taking a defense and a kicker more than likely.
Yeah.
I don't know that I care. Does anyone care?
I mean, that's good value.
Perfect. No, perfect. Love it. No one cares. There's a small, teeny tiny, maybe minuscule amount of upside. But I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on that. Because we need to talk about Mark Andrews. We've already teased it a couple times. Mark Andrews coming off the injury. This is the most, to me, I think this might be the most interesting thing on the Ravens, as much as I hate tight end historically and do not value tight end in any way. It's just as a story and as a concept, I think this is very interesting because we just got done talking about Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews opens as the tight end 4, which would translate to 61 overall in the ECR. He is going at 50. Don't find anything about that particularly shocking that the public would be a little higher than the ECR on Mark Andrews. What I find interesting is that he's going 16 spots behind Zay Flowers in ADP. That's what I find interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is a touchdown machine, right? This is kind of that's the area that he really dominated. So it's going to be hard for Flowers to do anything in comparison. I mean, in a lot of big games for Andrews, and so it'll be interesting to see. This is always so fun because of the Ravens offense is just one of those unique beasts that it really can be anybody beating you on any day, but they're going to grind you out first.
Mike Manning, Zay Flowers at 34, Mark Andrews at 50, or no?
No, then Andrews, then Flowers.
Okay. And then what else you got on that one? I just wanted to nail that down before, because I saw you
starting.
say something.
Generally, the starting offense is going to be Bateman and Flowers out wide with Andrews in the slot, or likely. And really, I'd probably take anything tight end related over any wide receiver on the Ravens offense. But again, the tight end position, like, you want to have that cheat code. You want to have the advantage at the position. But as we saw last year, like Sam Laporta was doing really well as a rookie, but it was like the worst tight end 1 season in recent memory. So it's like, cool, you got the best, but you could have had like a better wide receiver or something along those lines, a more impactful player at a different position.
So that's my general philosophy that people who've listened to this for a long time will know, is that I don't care about tight end at all. Like, it doesn't matter. I have the same argument with quarterback because I can replace all of that. It's all replaceable because there's like only a smattering of good quarterbacks and tight ends. So some people will evaluate that and say, no, you'd have a huge advantage if you had one of the good ones. And I'm like, right. But when the cost to acquire one of the good ones is so high, it's actually easier just to pick up value later, get cheap ones in the draft. And then there's always quarterbacks that hit throughout the year. Every single year, there's quarterbacks that hit. Same thing with tight ends. So paying the premium, the way I view it is that's a luxury. Like, that's purely a luxury. And honestly, if your team is good enough in season and you've got appropriate depth, when we get to the playoff window, even in pure redraft, you can probably trade for one of the tight ends or quarterbacks. Delete is applicable. You can have a luxury quarterback or you can have a luxury tight end. You cannot have both. You will be so weak at running back, at wide receiver, that you won't compete. One injury and you're toast. You won't be able to dig out from under it. Mike Burland, final thoughts on Mark Andrews here before we move on.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And I think if you take out the game where he left, I think he was actually, his points per game were better than Kelsey and Laporta last year, which I think a lot of people don't realize. So, for the people that do want to get one of these elite tight ends, to me, there's kind of a bucket of 4 in Kelsey, McBride, Laporta, and Andrews. And I see Andrews going last of that 4 a lot. And I'll take that value, every day. And even Kincaid will probably sneak. There's be a decent amount of drafts where Kincaid's going to go over Andrews because he's going to catch a touchdown in preseason or something, and people are going to freak out. So if you do want to take one of those tight ends, I guess my advice is like wait on Andrews, because taking like Andrews in the 4th or 5th round versus Laporta in the 2nd or 3rd, it's, there's no question I'll take Andrews.
There's another thing, and this is the last item on the sheet. So the thing that I do like about Andrews, if the draft fell to me in a very specific way, where I had gotten all of my wide receivers and running backs in the relevant tiers sniped out from under me, and I'm staring down the reality that I'm probably going to have to take Mark Andrews or drop a tier, Mark Andrews would be the one I would want because I could handcuff him to Isaiah Likely, who has no ADP. He is just going undrafted. And he's like Isaiah Likely is kind of like a unicorn. He's in a lot of ways, actually, both like what his skill set is, but also he's a fantasy football tight end handcuff. And that's like the rarest thing ever. But I would want him because if something happens to Laporta, you're done. If something happens to Kelsey, everyone but Jason would tell you that. Anyone who's got any sense would tell you you're done, except for Jason, who will tell you to whatever about. We're not going down that rabbit hole, Jason. We don't have time.
No, agree.
We're running out of time. No, get out of here. And it's the same thing with all the high-end tight ends, is that there is no tight end handcuff. Well, in this case, you actually could do that. I don't really like holding 2 tight ends as a general thing, but in this case, I might be willing to. If I had to, gun to my head, take Mark Andrews in the 4th round, I might consider being willing to hold on to Isaiah Likely at the very end of my draft, just so I don't have to spend anything to pick it up later. Because we saw that Isaiah Likely, when healthy, is actually a thing. He's relevant. Not my favorite player I've ever seen in the world, but Lamar trusts him, and they used the tight end in that offense. So, does anybody have any thoughts on Isaiah Likely before we wrap up here?
I mean, he could be 3rd on the team in targets. I wouldn't be surprised, but that's not saying much for the Ravens offense.
Yes, that's probably actually likely the case, especially if they're going to be running 2 tight end sets more often than not.
Just make a pun. What did I tell you about puns? What did He didn't even know he made a pun. It was an unintentional pun, apparently. Mike, take us home. What do you think about Isaiah Likely?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have his games. He's probably one of the only tight ends that aren't the number 1 tight end. He's going to probably have more games than a bunch of the back end starting tight ends.
Yeah.
He's going to have those games, but people are going to be like, okay, now he's going to become a thing, even with Andrews healthy. And I don't see that being much of a thing. But the tight end position, as we said, is so dead and barren that it's possible that him being 3rd in targets is going to make him startable with Andrews still available.
I will predict and then we'll go for final thoughts. I will predict that that as we're recording this on 6/25, that Isaiah Likely has no ADP. I predict that by the time we get to 9/1, he will have an ADP. He'll do something in the preseason that people will be reminded of who he is, and then suddenly this lovely value might become a little bit less of a value, and then we'll see about that. Because I'm not gonna lie, I was a little surprised when I was compiling this yesterday that he had no ADP. Sort of figured he would have an ADP given what he's done, not just last year, but even the year prior. Strange. Final thoughts on the Ravens. We'll go around the horn. Jason, do you have any more likely puns? You got any more?
That's likely all I had. I don't know.
Okay. It's not as funny when you force it. It's funnier when you just blunder into the puns and don't realize you even did it.
No.
Mike, either Mike, go ahead. Final thoughts on the Ravens?
Nope. I'm excited about Henry, and if you want to take one of the top tight ends, I think Andrews is the way to go for the value.
Yeah. The offense is what it's been for years at this point, even with new faces in there, and whether it be the coaching staff or the players. I'm still not touching Flowers, or I'm not touching the Ravens' number one wide receiver if he's going anywhere near what those ADPs are. And, you know, you have a good idea what to expect from Henry, but if his ADP starts floating any higher, then I'm probably out.
Yeah.
This is a good offense that is a headache for fantasy.
I will echo all of that. The Zay Flowers scares the bleep out of me, especially at that ADP. I'm going to go ahead and let that be somebody else's problem, and I'm willing to be wrong, and if they hit the lottery, good for you, bud. And Derrick Henry, as much as I love the player, if it gets any higher, I'm probably just going to let somebody else deal with that problem. It's just because it's capped on the upside, as we discussed. And at some point, I guarantee you, there's going to be a conversation probably on Twitter about, they're throwing Derrick Henry passes, and he's going to catch passes in this offense. And whenever that happens, just ignore it and unfollow whoever is telling you that. Just get that out of your feed, because it's not going to be real. Anyway, gentlemen, been an absolute pleasure. I hope everyone at home has enjoyed this and found it productive. We will be back in your world, in the listening audience's world, tomorrow. And we will be discussing Buffalo, which I'm sure no one will have any contentious opinions on whatsoever. but we will do that tomorrow. And until then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!